Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 502.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other CashFlow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because when you are out there building your business, I know that many of you will eventually encounter the world of real estate. Now, some of you are building a business that is 100% related to real estate. Others of you're building a business and then you're going to store your wealth in the world of real estate, as you should. You knew I was going to say that. Now, some of you, and I think you will get this, when it comes down to it, there are many different forms of real estate. One of my favorite has been the commercial world. As many of you know, we've done the commercial retail, and well, I don't know if you'd really call cell phone towers commercial, but I definitely like it. Nonetheless, I want to make sure that you guys understand that financing and the funds and how commercial works, it's a little bit different. Okay, it's a lot of bit different. And I have with me someone today who can help educate you on those differences. But more importantly, sometimes finding a good quality commercial lender can feel worse than finding that deal. I mean, nothing is more painful than to find the deal that you know is going to make sense, but not be able to find someone who can help you make it happen. And I happen to have with me today none other than Leslie Smith. You may be familiar with her from Commercial Direct. They are out of Coral Gables, Florida, but they lend nationally in the United States. And here's what's exciting is that you guys know I love it when there are more women in business. And I love the fact that she's in a business that is traditionally dominated by men, which means we're going to have lots of things to talk about today. From growing the business, understanding the business. But yes, we're going to talk about the money and all that too. But I think you're going to learn a lot and be able to take some valuable lessons that are going to help all of us become bigger, better, badder entrepreneurs. So with that being said, I know if you're on the treadmill, walking the dog, doing those things that you like to do, be ready to take some notes anyway as we listen, learn, and love Leslie Smith. Leslie, how you doing?
Good morning. Thanks for that intro.
You were quite welcome. I'm excited. I didn't tell you this ahead of time. I'm a father of 4 children, 3 daughters, and I love it when there are more women in business. It actually just gets me excited because they need more examples, and you are one of them. So I'm already excited for that alone.
Thank you, and I agree with you on that, especially in this business.
Right. I'm just like, wow. This is great. We've got to talk because, you talk about finance, ego, business, male energy. Woohoo. I can't wait. This is going to be fun. All right. Now, this being the first time you're here, though, I have to ask you the same question that I ask everybody else. You ready?
Sure.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes, like Superwoman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Robin, etc. Because I think superheroes and entrepreneurs have a ton of things in common, chief among them. As an entrepreneur, occasionally I can envision myself as, flying around town, using our products and services and saving our customers one sale at a time. Yet, also like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. So if you think about Spider-Man, for example, there was a time where he was just a kid going to school, doing his thing, taking some photos. Then one day he gets bit by a spider, discovers he's got a superhuman ability, and he gets to choose whether to use it for good or for evil. So my question to you is as follows. Before Commercial Direct, before, all of you and managing all the correspondent relationships that you do, before being in the financial industry, before everything that we know you for today, what we want to know is, who is Leslie Smith?
Wow, but I have to first think about what would be my superhero power. I mean, gosh. Of course, this industry is not necessarily you wake up in the morning, you're like, I totally want to make loans. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. For the most part, most people look at me, when they ask me at maybe a parent, event or something, and I tell them what I do, they're always like, well, I make commercial loans. They look at me and they're like, well, I guess someone has to do that. I'm like, well, yes, wow. Someone has to do that. and that's what I do. But before that, I started my career in banking in a call center for a small private bank, and we just serviced their private banking sector. And that's how my career started in banking. Call center is tough. It's you're as good as the one person that calls in sick that day, but you still have to deliver the same service. So I think that experience taught me to be fast on my feet, to really try to solve problems really quickly. And I think maybe, I think I know what my superpower is, which is spidey sense. And I think is just about, really, adjusting and listening to the other person on the other side and saying, okay, how do I, make the situation better? What does this person really need? So banking. And from there, I went from a call center agent to managing the group. And then, I realized that banking moves really slowly. And so I wanted something new, something different. And I had a box and I could have been happy in that box. I could have stayed there and just, had a decent career. But I wanted something different. One thing led to another. And I was given an opportunity in 2004 for a company that was starting to originate small balance commercial. And that's how I got into originations. And what was different about that company, which is still my parent company, they were very entrepreneurial. We had a really wide box, and we had the freedom to be creative and the freedom to think, not like traditional lenders. And that was exciting and that was fun. And so that's how I started.
Got it. Now, we're going to go in a lot of places, that's for sure. But I've got to ask this question because, my kids are ranged anywhere from 22 down to 7 years of age. So we scan everything. But when I ask them, today, especially the younger ones, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? I've never gotten the response banker. So I'm curious to know how that became the thing for you. Like, was that, you're like, you know what, I banking, that's where I'm going to be? Or did you go through like the ballerina, firefighter, astronaut phase? What was before the banking though that led us there?
Oh, before banking, I did a lot of retail and I waited tables, and that was really hard work. So I was like, I don't want to do that. But when I was really little, I wanted to be a Supreme Court justice. I was very much.
Yes.
I
like
much
you already.
into,
you don't shoot small at all, do you? You just like,
no.
Top sounds good for me. That's where I belong. This is good. Keep going.
I just loved LA law, and I loved, all those, maybe some of it was probably inappropriate for that time, but, I won't tell my mom that. But generally, like, I just loved the law, and that's what I thought, I wanted to do.
Okay, you were definitely the first to say Supreme Court justice, but I love it at the end of the day. So now there's a couple of things I just want to make sure that we clear up so that we leave no one behind as they're listening. You use the phrase and you call it small balance commercial. For all of the entrepreneurs listening, could you define what that is?
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. It's a good thing to define, because small balance means a lot of things to different people. For us specifically, small balance is $250,000 to $2 million. And, typically my average loan size is about $450,000. So we're not talking about millions of dollars. We're talking about a small business owner or investor. That's our target market.
And I want to underscore for everyone. I get the question a lot. People ask me for, hey, can you help me with such and such a loan and such as this loan? And most of the time, my response, guys, has been the loan you're looking for is too small. The people that I know, they want much larger balances for their loans. This is why individuals like Leslie and her company are important. is because they fill this gap in this what she said, 250 to 2 million, that it can be very, very challenging to find. So hopefully you're getting a little bit more excited about that. Now, you said something else that we have to dig into, because I think the financial industry, specifically banking and definitely lending, you guys take a lot of heat for being very rigid in terms of what you can and can't do, how it works, etc. And you mentioned that you had a box, but you're working in a way that's more entrepreneurial. What exactly does that mean in layman's terms?
Well, I mean, we definitely do a traditional looking at, documentation and credit scores. That's where we haven't thrown that out the door. But I think for us, we're really looking at the person that is coming to us in that business. If you have a person that's coming to you for a loan and they've made it through a recession, and their story of continuing their business and not, having to lose their shirt during the recession, that says a lot about a person to continue to be committed and see it through. So for us, yes, we use tons of data and third party to make a formal credit decision, but equally as important is that person on the other side, because you need to know the character of that person. You need to understand, what motivates them, what is the purpose of what you're trying to do, and if you're aligned. That's another way of you understanding whether this person's going to repay or not. It's important. So yes, you can go through just putting stuff in a model in a computer and it's spitting out a response of a yes approved or no declined. But I think that's where financial institutions are short-sighted. They're missing an opportunity of someone that's really a really strong borrower.
Yeah, totally 100%. Now, what other things and other than maybe experience history, or you guys, would you consider yourselves unique at looking at?
We also, don't look at just tax returns. We have other ways of making sure that someone, how healthy their business is. I think for us, tax returns are a snapshot in time, but it doesn't necessarily tell you about all the other things that happen, the macro impacts, and how that person's running their business day to day. So we found other ways to kind of really look at the health of the business, what's their income, are they making money, and a tax return is just one way, but we have other ways of actually getting to that data and getting to that information.
So let's talk for a second to the entrepreneurs that are listening, that are, let's say they're more at the beginning. They're looking at, I'm ready to go and take on, maybe they wanted to take on their first commercial property, or maybe they're taking on their first business in general. You've looked at, I'm just going to say, more than one application. This is not your first rodeo. What do you see out there that a lot of people could do better to increase their probability of being able to get access to the financing that they're looking for?
Really not being afraid of what their story is. I think a lot of people, one, they need to know what their objective is. Are you, is this something, are you increasing your wealth? And this is why you're investing in these properties. If you are refinancing and you want to take out equity from your property to reinvest in your business, can you tell us? What is it really that you're going to reinvest? What is your expected outcome? So it's more of really understanding what you want to do with that loan that you supposedly want. That's really, really important. And a lot of folks come to us and don't really have a good response. They don't know necessarily like what they're going to do next. They've only thought about getting the loan. But now, okay, what's after that? And for us, for me as a lender, very important to know after. What happens after?
Got it. So what would you say then is the top 3 reasons why someone who's seeking financing, especially in a new situation, what's the top 3 reasons for your declines?
Besides practically speaking, a credit score.
Yes.
I think that after that is really the inconsistencies in their story, and what they want to do does not jive with the documentation that we're looking at. And we're not talking about, like, our borrowers are not perfect. They don't have the best accountants. They don't necessarily document everything, and that's okay. But what we're trying to do is say, okay, we received this paper from here, we pulled a third-party report, and this is your story. And you know what? It kind of all makes sense. It's not in an orderly way. It's not the way a bank would want a full credit file. and we're comfortable with that. But we're looking for consistency.
Interesting. I got it. Like it, because one of the things that I know that I've been looking into recently is purchasing some additional businesses that I could run as an absentee owner, and I definitely did not have any desire to do it. It's mostly about creating more jobs locally is what I care about, and being able to do so to be able to purchase the number of businesses and locations that I want is obviously going to require leverage, and that we've spent a lot of time explaining that, because it's more about that for me than it is actually which industry and what we're trying to get done. I can understand why the story matters. So I'm curious to know, though, when it comes to working in the world of finance, I mean, obviously it's competitive, and you've been through a thing or two. You've been through a recession yourself, so to say. I mean, and it takes something to survive all of those things. What I would really love to know is, what challenges do you think you've had or do women face specifically, on top of everything else that already has to be dealt with just to make it specifically in the financial world?
I think one is, like you said when you introduced me, it's just kind of the example of someone already there. If you don't see someone already there and actively within your firm or within the industry being successful, being respected, and generally being happy with what they do, it's really hard to kind of step into that world if you don't have an example of like, well, you know what, like at least, she's doing it. She seems to be happy. People respect her. I think that's really, really important. And that's really what's lacking. I mean, I go to conferences and I go, and I do different things, and it's, I'm very much the minority in that group. And even, my own friends, like, they sometimes they're not that extra leap of pushing their career forward because they don't see themselves in that next tier of management or executive management.
Yeah, well, I'm partly asking this because being an African American male, when I have gone to the commercial world, it is often assumed that I am not the principal, I am not the owner, and it's I find it challenging and sometimes downright infuriating. Like, why could I not be? Why are you you're actually talking to my executive assistant? You don't realize this right now, but that's okay. And having to deal with those things, and I've experienced it more in the commercial world than others. And I'm just wondering if you've ever felt like you're looked past and just not something, and how have you dealt with that?
I think people are surprised when I walk in a room for different reasons, like my name. So I don't necessarily look like a Leslie Smith. One. The second thing is, I stopped taking it personally because I think I see it as an opportunity to open their minds about what's possible.
Right.
I also, as a woman, I think that I've been able to just, listen a little bit more and walk into a room and have that spidey sense and adjust my behavior. And some people may say, well, that's kind of like, well, why? You're like giving in. I'm like, no, because ultimately I'm going to get what I need and what I want. Maybe that day is not the day, but I'm going to come back, and you're going to see me here again, and we're going to do what needs to get done, that I know needs to get done. So, like, it's for me, it's always been an education of others. I've been lucky where I personally have not gone through major conflict. There's been conflict, but nothing that I can say compared to others. But I think that it happens all the time. And I've come to a point where I take it as an opportunity to educate about who I am and how I got here. And then for them to see past that and see that I earned this seat and I'm running a successful business. And let's talk about why we're here.
Yep. Totally agreed. Love it 100%. So when it comes down to, making business happen, what are, I guess, some of the things that you would consider, because we all grow through this process. What were some of those early challenges, just in general, that you think every entrepreneur faces? How did you overcome them? what could someone take away from the lessons that you've learned? Hello there, entrepreneur. This is Jay Massey. I know that if you've ever gone over to the site, CashFlowDiary.com, you may have asked yourself, where on earth do you get a domain name from? Especially as you are beginning to build your bigger, better, badder business, you need a web presence. You need the email address. You need a way for people to contact you electronically so that you can stop doing the @gmail.com game. Well, the good folks over at GoDaddy have definitely supplied us with every domain that we have ever used. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to trygodaddy.com/CashFlowDiary. Again, that's trygodaddy.com/CashFlowDiary, because it's a quick way for you to get set up to capture your domain name the exact way that you want it. They got easy search functions, and most importantly for you is that you'll be up and running today. As I said, once you get started, stay started. Don't let small little obstacles of how to get your own domain name going stop you. So again, go to trygodaddy.com/CashFlowDiary, and let's get back to the rest of the story.
I think one is hiring the right team. The people.
Oh, girl, preach. Say that again.
Because I think, hiring slow and firing fast is one of the things that I think is really important. And if you're an entrepreneur and you can't, you have the luxury of hiring a couple of layers of people, then you have to hire unicorns. You have to hire people that can do a lot of different things and do it well, because you don't have the luxury of spending a lot of money on bodies. So I think one of those things is it's partnering and surrounding yourself with a strong group of people is so critical to your success. And people that are going to be honest with you, they're not going to yes you, and they're going to really speak their mind in a respectful way, but just really speak that's who you want to surround yourself with. I would say the other thing is just, also not being very focused in your industry only, and not paying attention to what's happening in other industries. Because,
hold on. What do you mean? Help me understand that. Unpack that a little bit.
Meaning, okay, so yes, I'm in lending, but I also pay attention to what's happening, to the Amazons of the world, and paying attention to what's happening with, big marketing firms, what ads are coming out, like all the, you can't just read about your industry. These other companies are being very creative, and that might spark an idea that you may be able to take into and then massage it into your own industry. So not just focus on who are your direct competitors, what's happening in your industry, but look up and look at what else is happening just in business, in entertainment. It really makes you much more of a freer thinker.
Got it. Now I understand. So with that being the case, then what's been the secret? Leslie, give us a hint at that superpower so that we can figure out what might we be able to add to our repertoire so that we can find something unique that could help us grow the businesses that we have faster and therefore come get more loans.
Yeah, I know. As as a leader of this company, I really believe that the nice thing about how this company started was that it was backed and supported by our larger parent company. And, I feel for entrepreneurs because I already had an infrastructure to help me. And what I mean by that is like the whole legal, HR, that kind of support, accounting, finance, that becomes so overwhelming for someone that's trying to do all those things and also grow a business and think forward, into, next quarter, next 6 months. One of the things that's helped me is that I've just been allowed to focus on my business. And so that is so such a game changer when you're trying to move forward and show progress, because there's all this other help that's been given to me. And I think that's the biggest challenge for an entrepreneur, is that they have to do all those things all at the same time. And it's been one of the biggest things that's helped me. Apart from that, I think doing what we do, there is a need. I'm solving a problem, and I think the most successful entrepreneurs have really been keen on solving a problem that is needed. And that's what we're doing. The world is made up of tons of small business owners and people that, start with one investment property, just one. And from there, they want to grow their nest egg. And that is small. And it doesn't start at $1 million. It starts at 250. And so I think that's the piece that's unique about us, is that we are talking about real estate. We're not talking about unsecured loans. We're not a credit card. We're not an on deck or a cabbage, because those, we're talking about real property. And for us, that's what's important, because these are people that have properties and they don't necessarily understand how to leverage them at times, and the value of that, and how to help them grow their business. From the flip side of that, on the investment side, as a new investor, it's expensive if you have no experience. Can be. A loan can be very, very expensive. Also, as an investor, we feel that they don't have a lot. I'm grateful for a program like yours, because it helps them, think about what do I want to invest in, and real estate is one of those things. Very much important if you're trying to build a nest egg. Real estate is, really critical in your overall, nest egg.
Absolutely. I believe it belongs in everybody's portfolio in some way, shape, or form. I mean, when you're going out there to create value with your business, that value, you typically create excess. That excess has to go somewhere, or maybe real estate is your business in and of itself. Either way it goes, I think it has a place. Now, with that being said, I want to talk for a moment about some verticals or, industries, because I'm curious to know if there's any particular vertical or industry that you guys prefer, or that you find easier to actually help people qualify for. Because because again, like I said, I know what I'm looking for. Like my dream purchase right now is approximately 7 or 8 laundromats where I can actually buy the building too. Inside that would be like the perfect thing in my world. But I'm curious to know, what's the perfect thing in your world?
For me, it's not a particular industry or even location. For me, it really comes down to that real estate and the person and that person that's coming to me for the loan. We lend to folks that have a small little automotive place and they want to expand it. We lend to people that have had a nail salon in a strip center for over a decade. They have 3 other little stores, and they're like, why am I paying rent? Like, I know my neighbors.
Exactly.
Why can't I, so we're agnostic, because we're really looking at that business and their motivation very closely. So there isn't a specific industry that we prefer. Multifamily, it's the property type that's the most, that there is the most of, but, there's a lot of competition for that. I like the small office, the retail, the bar restaurant, and those are much more challenging to get financing for.
Yeah, they are. That's amazing. You're building a business around what is, like I said, very, very difficult to find for a lot of people. So what motivates you to take on the challenge? Like, I think you have a double challenge. One, not a lot of people know how to find such, your type of financing. And then you're like, but I'm over here. And then you have to go find the unique people who are actually looking for that. I think that's got to be a challenge.
That's our biggest challenge. Our biggest challenge, making the loans, that's not, it's hard work. It's thoughtful work, but it's not impossible. What's harder is to find, get your name out there and say, hey, you know what? You want to buy that retail strip mall? We're here. Or even one of the most surprising things, you have we see a lot of doctors, dentists, chiropractors. They've been in the same office for 20 years, and they never thought about buying that real estate. And I'm always so surprised by that. They've been running a successful business, but they never thought about investing in themselves and then actually purchasing that office. And I'm always excited by also, just finding a bar in the most, random places. And we're still trying to find that flow. We're trying to get our name out there and make sure that people are like, hey, we're here and we want to hear your story. If you were declined by a traditional lender, please, don't give up. continue and pursue, what your objective is. And we may be able to help you to do that.
Okay. So I'm going to throw something creative at you. You ready?
Sure.
All right. So I happen to know and am one of those people who getting creative with the use of apartment buildings, right? And turning a lot of them into more short-term rentals or using single-family houses in a very similar way. Obviously, when we do that, we produce a significantly higher amount of gross revenue than what the traditional rent would be. We've been doing it for a number of years. Many of our students have now been doing it for a number of years, and it's awesome. It does great. Yet, when we go to buy the property, we're having trouble finding that financing simply because the use is slightly different than what most people are used to. Now, we've had some insurance companies step up to the plate, some non-traditional stuff, but, those interest rates can be a little bit punishing, and there's terms have only been, 24 months-ish, and I'm like, that doesn't really work. So how would you tackle something like that?
So, yeah, I mean, we're generally like our loans are 5 years. That's typically our bar. They're in for 5. So we're not doing short term.
That's fine.
Those tend to be expensive. So okay, so for us, it's not use. We've seen quite a bit of that. When we've seen people and when we look at what their rents are versus what the market says it's supposed to be, there's a really big disparity because you are charging a premium.
Yep.
What's challenging for us, which we're trying to create, think very creatively in 2019, is how do we balance that? How do we balance the revenue that's coming out of those rents versus what the market is telling us it's supposed to be? And so from our perspective, as we're planning for 2019, that's the product that we're trying to develop. We're trying to make sure that we, from a risk perspective, can get comfortable with income that's much higher than what typically, let's say you stop doing that business and you just have to rent it regularly.
Right.
How do we get comfortable with that disparity? I think it's a good business. I think we have to think about how we get comfortable with that cash flow. Separately, the other thing that we're trying to pay attention to is we're looking at, how cities and municipalities are adjusting to the Airbnb world. I think that's another concern for us. So those are the two buckets that I think if we, as we talk about product development for 2019, there are certain markets that I'd like to pilot and test in that are, that I think would be successful. But I need the powers that be to say, yeah, you know what, let's test that. How do we get comfortable with that? But then we're also, from a legal perspective, we're looking at, okay, how is Airbnb faring, in certain markets? Are the rules kind of closing in on them? Would that impact this type of lending? And
these are the conversations that I'm definitely looking to start with more and more lenders because, again, in the same way that Amazon is a marketplace for a lot of retail consumers and customers, it's not the only source of. It's just not their only source of customers. We have multiple sources of customers. Airbnb is just the one that everybody knows. And ultimately, because in our perfect world, what happens is we acquire that customer, sure, via Airbnb first. But what ends up happening is that they end up coming direct, and it's that direct business, and it's many different various sources, just like your commercial retail place. I mean, they've got many different marketing channels in order to get that customer through the door, and it's literally no different. I mean, I think there's a whole lot of white space there and strong opportunity for the individual or individuals who figure out how to get us the financing for the properties that we want to buy. I mean, because the NOIs and debt service coverage ratios that we can put together are they're pretty good.
and we recognize that because we see that in our normal course. And so as we plan for 2019, I mean, it is November, part of our product development is that. And so we have a couple feelers out there and we're trying to figure out from a credit perspective and risk perspective, how do we get comfortable with that cash flow? And then from a legal perspective, how do we, what's out there, how do we feel about it, and how do we solve for it?
Yeah.
So that for us is definitely in queue we see it as an opportunity from a product development. Now let's kind of figure out how do we, from a risk perspective, we get comfortable.
Totally understood. Yeah, I've been training all of our entrepreneurs and students that it's coming. I was like, in my head, it was like, there's no way they don't know. They're just having trouble figuring out how to manage their risk. And in the meantime, guys, I've been just telling everybody to just become the best operator so that when they figure it out, you can be there ready to receive. So that's kind of been our take on that so far.
Definitely.
So now, for those that have listened this far and are understanding again about Commercial Direct, who you guys are, what you're up to, and probably want to, find out more information, maybe even about their own personal situation, what's going to be the best way for them to follow up with you guys?
Best way is to go to our website. We have a chat feature. We have that where you can have an LO directly chat with you, or if you want to talk to them, you can reach them. But all that information is on our website. We also have a lot of educational videos where, if you want to understand about, commercial lending, we have a YouTube video, we have videos on our site. We have a lot of blogs just about lending, property types, what's debt service, insurance requirements. Sometimes it could be overwhelming. And I think for people, if in education really helps, then, get themselves comfortable with this kind of decision. So on our site, you can find us, and you can also, read about, commercial lending in general. Excellent.
Now, as we wind down here, I've got a final question for you because I'm curious to hear your answer. Let's pretend that someone listening, they've gotten themselves, they've listened this entire time to you and I talking, and then they got, they're like, man, their belief level went up. They're like, I can do this thing. I can be that entrepreneur. I'm going to make this thing happen. If Leslie can do it, I can do it. Of course, this is going to make sense. Now, like I know, that when we get to those moments of decision, we often have a companion, and that companion comes in the form of a voice, and that voice reminds us of how we didn't do it last time, how it failed and fell apart, and how it didn't work. And someone's going to actually lend you money? Do you not understand who you are? And for some people, they're actually related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend that this time it's going to be different. This time they're going to follow through, and they're going to do exactly what you suggest. They're going to do so, in fact, in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
I would suggest that they think about their story first. Okay, really be comfortable with that story. The next step is, if you're looking for a commercial loan, come to Commercial Direct. And even if you don't have a property, you're thinking of looking for a property, come to us. We do pre-approvals. At least you'll know whether you can get financing. I think that's, really important for a lot of folks in commercial. I think it's also a unique part of what we do in that on the residential side, you can get a pre-approval. Rarely can you get it on the commercial side, and we do that. And so at least you go out into the world looking for a property or an investment or whatever, but at least you know that you have the financing to ultimately get, that property and that investment.
I like it because it's very, very actionable. So this is good. I definitely, again, appreciate all that you guys are doing, the space that you're filling, and hopefully we're helping right now to put you in front of more of those individuals who can be difficult to find. And I definitely appreciate you sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, as well as your insight here with us today at the CashFlow Diary.
Thank you for having me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? That means commercialdirect.com. When, now, why? Because you heard something that said, wow, there's an opportunity and it's for me. And that's true. So here's your shot. Go make it happen. Ladies and gentlemen, you earn $0 on a property you do not own. So go make it happen. We look forward to talking to you again. It was fun talking to you today. Until next time.